The rain fell like broken glass, sharp and relentless, slicing through the night. Chicago was half asleep, its skyline trembling in the storm, lights bleeding into the slick streets like bruised stars. Inside, a silver Bentley, gliding down Michigan Avenue. Nathan Whitmore loosened his tie for the first time that day. Or rather, the first time that year. The radio mumbled the day's stock numbers. But he wasn't listening. He had built empires out of silence, yet tonight, even silence refused to obey him. His fingers tapped against the steering wheel. Restless. He should have been at his penthouse by now, or buried in numbers and meetings that numbed the ache of existence. But something invisible had made him take the long way home. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was loneliness disguised as duty. And then he saw her. A woman, barely more than a shadow, sitting under the flickering light of a deserted bus stop. Her coat was too thin for November. The child in her arms, a boy, perhaps 6, slept against her chest, his small curls damp with rain. For a brief, breathless moment, the world stilled. Nathan hit the brakes before his mind could argue with his heart. Through the rain-streaked window, her profile came into focus, dark skin glistening under the neon light. Eyes closed, lips trembling slightly as she hummed something under her breath. A lullaby, perhaps, though it sounded more like prayer. He rolled down the window. "Do you need help?" The woman startled, clutching the boy tighter. Her voice was soft, but firm. "No. Thank you. We're waiting for the bus." Nathan glanced up the street. No headlights. No movement. Only the howl of wind, dragging plastic bags across the asphalt. There won't be another bus tonight. The city's shut down half the routes. She didn't answer. Her fingers stroked the boy's cheek gently, as if to shield him from words that could bruise. He hesitated. He wasn't the kind of man who stopped for strangers. Everything about his life was calculated, secure, unyielding. Yet this scene, this woman unraveled something he thought he'd buried years ago. "Look," he said finally, his voice softer than he expected. "You can't stay here. It's below freezing. Let me drive you somewhere safe." The woman's eyes met his, and in that instant, Nathan's world, the world of numbers, contracts, and control, began to crack, because those eyes, he had seen them before, not in this life, perhaps, but in another moment that refused to die. A flash of laughter under dim light, perfume and music, and a night he never dared remember. "Please," he added, "it's not safe out here." She hesitated, the weight of pride and fear warring across her face. Then she nodded a quiet surrender. Not to him, but to the storm. He stepped out, rain slicing across his coat. When he opened the car door for her, she shifted the child in her arms with delicate precision, as if every movement mattered. The boy stirred, murmuring something half asleep. "What's his name?" Nathan asked. She glanced at him, wary. "Noah." He smiled, not with his mouth, but with something deeper. "That's a good name." The woman looked down, whispering, "It's the only thing I've ever done right." Something in her tone, that quiet, brittle honesty, stayed with him long after she slid into the seat. Inside the car, warmth and silence settled between them. Nathan adjusted the heater. The woman's breath fogged up the window as she looked outside, her reflection ghosting against the glass. "You're not from around here," he said carefully. She shook her head. "We came from Detroit. I was hoping to find work here. Do you have somewhere to stay?" "Not yet," she admitted. "But I'll find something." Nathan's gaze drifted to the rearview mirror. Noah's head rested on his mother's shoulder, lips parted, breathing softly innocent, peaceful, unaware of the storm outside. The boy's face looked familiar. The shape of his nose, the curve of his mouth. For a second, Nathan's breath hitched. He dismissed the thought instantly. Coincidence, he told himself. The mind plays cruel tricks in the rain. Still, unease curled in his stomach. Not fear, but a haunting sense of recognition. As they drove through the city, the world outside blurred into streaks of silver and black, every few blocks. He caught her glancing sideways, ready to leap at the first sign of danger. "You don't have to be afraid," he said quietly. "I've learned not to trust men who say that," she replied. The words hit harder than he expected. Nathan exhaled, glancing at her again. "Then trust the weather forecast. This storm isn't ending soon." A faint smile ghosted across her lips, the first flicker of warmth he'd seen from her. They drove in silence for several minutes. The radio hummed a slow jazz instrumental, and for the first time in years, Nathan didn't feel like filling the silence with numbers or deals. "What do you do?" she asked suddenly. He hesitated, unsure whether to tell the truth. "Business," he said. "Big business," she murmured, studying the car's interior, the polished dashboard, the leather seats, the suit jacket folded neatly beside him. "You look like someone who doesn't get wet often." He almost laughed. "Maybe not, but I've been standing in the rain for years." She turned to him, surprised by the honesty in his tone. He didn't look at her when he said it, but she could feel the truth in the air between them, heavy, raw, and unspoken. When they reached the quiet neighborhood near the lake, Nathan slowed the car. Through the downpour, his glass-walled mansion shimmered like a ghost ship. "You can stay here tonight," he said simply. "There's a guest room. I'll have my driver take you wherever you need to go in the morning." Lucy, though he didn't yet know her name, hesitated again. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," he said, turning off the engine. "It's common sense." Her eyes softened slightly. "Then, thank you." He opened the door, rain pouring harder now, and for a brief moment, lightning illuminated them both, two strangers caught in the same storm, each hiding a past they couldn't undo. Inside, the house was silent but alive, the kind of silence that hummed with secrets. Nathan handed her a towel and a blanket. "The room's upstairs. You can lock it from the inside," he said. "There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry." She nodded, holding Noah close. "We'll be gone by morning." He wanted to say, "You don't have to go," but the words stuck somewhere behind his ribs. Instead, he watched her disappear up the stairs, the sound of her footsteps like fading raindrops. Nathan stood by the window long after they were gone. The storm outside clawed at the glass, for the first time in years. He felt something he couldn't name, not pity, not curiosity, but a pull toward the unknown, toward her. And then, as lightning split the sky, his gaze caught something on the passenger seat, a small, faded envelope that must have fallen from her coat. Inside was a worn photograph. A young woman in a nurse's uniform, smiling shyly at the camera, the same eyes, the same trembling smile. And beside her, the hospital's logo, Whitmore Medical Foundation, his own name. Nathan's heart stopped for a beat. He sank into the driver's seat, the rain roaring outside like applause from a cruel audience. Could it be no? He told himself. It couldn't. It was impossible. Yet the storm whispered otherwise. And as the thunder rolled across the lake, Nathan felt a chill crawl up his spine, the kind that comes not from cold, but from recognition. Upstairs, Lucy tucked Noah into bed. The boy's breathing was even, peaceful. She brushed a hand over his forehead and whispered, "We'll be fine, just for tonight." But when she turned toward the window, lightning illuminated the rain-soaked glass, and her reflection, superimposed over the city lights, looked almost like a stranger. She pressed a hand to her chest, as if to quiet the ache that had lived there for years. The name Whitmore still haunted her, the name she'd tried to outrun. And now, by some cruel twist of fate, she was standing under its roof. She closed her eyes. Just one night. She whispered again. But fate, like the rain, doesn't stop for anyone. Outside, the storm eased into a steady drizzle. In the heart of the city, 2 lives, one drowning in guilt, the other in survival, had crossed paths again. Neither of them knew that this night, born of rain and silence, would change everything. Morning arrived like an apology, pale light sliding down the glass walls of the Whitmore mansion, softening what the storm had left behind. The rain had stopped, but everything smelled of it: wet earth, clean air, and the faint trace of something that had begun the night before: uncertainty. Nathan stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching her move. Lucy Johnson. That was the name she'd given when he asked over breakfast. Her voice cautious, but clear. She told him she used to be a nurse, that she'd lost her job because of an incident she didn't care to explain. She said it like someone who had learned that truth often costs more than silence. He didn't press. Instead, he offered something she didn't expect. "Stay," he said simply. "At least until you find somewhere else." Her hands had tightened around her cup of tea. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," he replied. "I need help around the house. It's too big for one person." That much was true. The mansion was vast, full of windows and ghosts. His housekeeper had quit months ago, claiming the place was too quiet to stay sane. So when Lucy hesitated, he looked straight into her eyes, not as a man offering shelter, but as someone asking to share a silence he no longer knew how to bear alone. She nodded. Just once. And that was how she became the woman in the glass house. At first, they barely spoke. Nathan's days were filled with conference calls and terse conversations that echoed through the marble halls. Lucy moved quietly, like water filling empty rooms. She swept, polished, cooked, and kept to herself. Noah followed her everywhere, a small, gentle shadow, with a curiosity that melted even Nathan's well-trained reserve. In the evenings, when Nathan came home late, he would sometimes hear music, soft notes from the grand piano in the sunroom. It wasn't perfect. The rhythm hesitated, the melody uncertain, but there was feeling in it. A small boy's attempt to understand the world through keys and sound. He would pause at the doorway, listening. "Did you teach him?" he asked one evening. Lucy, startled, shook her head. "No. He just listens and plays. I don't even know how he remembers." Nathan smiled faintly. "That's rare." She nodded, brushing a curl from her son's forehead. "He says it makes the house feel less lonely." Her words hung in the air between them, so light, yet somehow heavy enough to make Nathan's chest tighten. The Whitmore mansion was made almost entirely of glass walls, ceilings, corridors that seemed to reflect light from every angle. People used to call it the observatory. But now, to Nathan, it felt more like a cage made of mirrors. From his study on the second floor, he could see almost every part of the house, including the kitchen, where Lucy spent her mornings. He didn't mean to watch her, not at first, but there was something mesmerizing about the way she existed, unhurried, deliberate, as if every small motion carried meaning. The way she hummed when she cooked, the way she looked out at the lake, eyes unfocused, as though listening to something he couldn't hear. She wasn't beautiful in the obvious sense, but there was a truth in her, a quiet dignity that no designer dress could buy, no amount of power could imitate. Sometimes he caught himself waiting for the moment her voice filled the silence. It frightened him, the idea that after years of controlling everything, he could be undone by the sound of a woman humming to herself. Noah grew fond of Nathan quickly. He would run up the stairs to the study, holding his small drawing book. "Mr. Whitmore, do you know how to draw robots?" "Not really," Nathan admitted, setting his laptop aside. "But I can try." The boy giggled. "You're not good at this." "No," Nathan said, smiling. "But I'm good at other things." "Like what?" "Like fixing things that are broken." Noah tilted his head, considering. "Then maybe you can fix my mom's heart. It's been broken for a long time." Nathan froze. Before he could respond, Lucy appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "Noah." The boy looked up, confused. "I was just saying." "That's enough," she said, her voice sharper than he'd ever heard. She took Noah's hand and turned away, murmuring apologies that cut deeper than any accusation. When they were gone, Nathan sat in silence, the child's words echoing in his mind. Fix her heart. He wasn't sure he could even fix his own. That night, he couldn't sleep. He walked down to the kitchen for a glass of water. The house was dim, the moonlight turning the floor into rivers of silver. Lucy was there, her hair loose, standing by the sink. She jumped slightly when she saw him. "I didn't mean to." "It's fine," he said. "I couldn't sleep either." The silence between them was almost tender. After a while, she spoke quietly. "Noah didn't mean to be rude." "I know," Nathan said. "He's a good kid." She nodded, eyes distant. "He's all I have." The words struck him with more force than she realized. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but instead asked, "What about his father?" She stiffened. "He's not in the picture." There was pain in her tone, wrapped carefully in composure. Nathan hesitated. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked." Lucy turned away, her hands gripping the counter. People ask a lot of questions when they think you're poor, but they never ask how you survived. Nathan's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her he understood that wealth could be its own kind of poverty, but he knew how hollow that would sound. "I don't judge you," he said softly. "I didn't ask you to," she replied. And yet, something in her eyes softened just enough to make him believe she wanted to. Days passed. The rhythm of the house changed. Nathan started eating breakfast downstairs. He began working from home, finding excuses to pass through the kitchen or the garden. Lucy pretended not to notice. But one afternoon, while clearing the dining table, she accidentally brushed her hand against his glass of wine. It tilted, spilling across the marble. She gasped, reaching for it. But Nathan caught her wrist before she could move. The scent of her skin, warm, faintly sweet, hit him like memory. For a second, the room disappeared. The storm, the candlelight, the sound of laughter, the flash of eyes that trembled under his gaze 7 years ago. He released her wrist abruptly, stepping back as though burned. "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping the spill with trembling hands. "It's fine," he said too quickly, but his voice betrayed him unsteady, low, almost haunted. She looked up, meeting his eyes. Something in his expression made her heart falter. It wasn't anger. It was recognition. He turned away. "You should go rest. It's late." When she left, Nathan poured another glass and stared at the red liquid swirling like blood. 7 years. Could it be her? The nurse from that night, the one he'd never found. The one who'd vanished after the fire at the Whitmore Charity Gala. He'd spent months trying to locate her, to make sense of what had happened in that haze of smoke and guilt. And now, she was standing in his kitchen, humming to herself, while his son, her son, played the same melody she had once played that night. Nathan pressed his hands against the counter, breath shaking. "No," he muttered. "It can't be. But fate, like glass, doesn't stay unbroken forever." Upstairs, Lucy sat beside Noah's bed. The boy was asleep, his small hand curled around her wrist. She looked out at the glass walls, shimmering under the moonlight. In her reflection, she saw a woman she barely recognized, tired, cautious, but alive. She thought of Nathan's eyes when he'd touched her wrist, the way he'd looked at her as if he'd seen something buried deep in her past. And for the first time in years, she felt afraid. Not of danger, but of being known. Because if he looked long enough, he might see everything she had fought to forget. She pulled the blanket up around Noah's shoulders and whispered, "Sleep, baby. We'll be fine." But outside, the wind shifted, brushing against the glass like a warning. Downstairs, Nathan stood by the piano, touching one ivory key. A faint melody echoed the same lullaby Noah played, the same one that had haunted his dreams for 7 long years. He closed his eyes, and in the darkness, memory stirred a door creaking open, a voice whispering his name, the scent of jasmine and rain. The truth was coming. He could feel it in the music. The first crack in Nathan Whitmore's empire wasn't financial, it was human. The market simply made it visible. A rumor spread like wildfire. through the morning news. Whitmore Technologies plummets after CEO accused of tax negligence and employee layoffs. Every channel carried his face cold, perfect, unbothered alongside headlines that bled words like ruthless, unfeeling, heartless billionaire. It wasn't new. But this time, the storm didn't pass. Inside the glass mansion, Nathan stood before the wall of windows, phone pressed to his ear, voice taut. I don't care what Forbes says. Fix it. Push the statement by noon. When he hung up, silence filled the room again, that familiar, echoing silence that had become his second skin. But from the kitchen, laughter floated up soft, warm, unguarded. Lucy's laughter. He looked down and saw her through the glass, sitting beside Noah at the dining table, helping him with a school project. She leaned in to show him how to spell courage, and when Noah misspelled it, she laughed until her shoulders shook. Nathan didn't realize he was smiling, not the kind the press photographed, but something quiet, unforced, almost forgotten. That was when the idea came. Wild, reckless, utterly unlike him. The next morning, his PR director, Rachel Vaughn, sat across from him in the conference room, her manicured nails tapping impatiently on the table. Nathan, we need to humanize you, she said bluntly. People see numbers, not a person. You need warmth, family, relatability, a girlfriend, even a fake one. No. Listen to me. Rachel pressed, flipping her tablet around. This is how they do it now. Controlled optics, a charity dinner, a public appearance with someone normal, a woman who looks grounded, wholesome, kind. Her eyes flicked toward the photo on his phone, a candid shot of Noah and Lucy laughing over a spilled bowl of flour. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Who's that? Nathan's jaw tightened. Just someone helping around the house. Rachel's smirk was small, but sharp. She's perfect. Ordinary enough to look believable. Beautiful enough to distract the press. He didn't answer. But later that night, the image of Lucy brushing Noah's curls out of his eyes refused to leave his mind. Maybe it was insanity, or maybe it was something dangerously close to hope. The next day, he found her in the garden, trimming the small rosebush Noah had planted. Lucy, he began, and immediately hated how awkward his voice sounded. He wasn't used to asking for things. He was used to buying them. She looked up. Yes, Mr. Whitmore. He hesitated. Nathan, he corrected. Just Nathan. A small smile flickered at the corner of her lips. All right. Nathan. What is it? He exhaled, then said the words before he could talk himself out of them. I want you to pretend to be my girlfriend, just for a few months. Lucy froze, pruning shears halfway through a stem. What? He kept his tone steady, businesslike, though his pulse betrayed him. It's for optics. My company is under pressure. The media's tearing me apart. My team thinks a softer image might help. A relationship. Her eyes narrowed. You mean a lie? He didn't deny it. A necessary one. Lucy's laugh was bitter. And you think I'm the perfect candidate for that? He met her gaze. You're the only person I trust. She shook her head, disbelief and anger warring inside her. You don't even know me. Then let me, he said quietly. That stopped her. Nathan stepped closer, voice low. I'll pay you. Enough to cover Noah's medical bills and his education, whatever he needs. For a moment, her face went completely still. The mention of Noah cracked something she'd fought to keep sealed. How do you? He cut in gently. I saw the hospital letters, the surgery estimates. You shouldn't have to carry that alone. Lucy turned away, her hands trembling. This isn't fair. No. He agreed. It isn't. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. You're asking me to sell the only thing I have left, my dignity. I'm asking you to survive, he said, softer now, and maybe help me survive, too. Silence stretched between them, fragile as glass. Then, with a breath that sounded like surrender, she said, just a few months. He nodded. Fine. Neither of them realized, in that moment, that no contract could define what was about to begin. The first event was a charity gala at the Chicago Symphony Hall. Rachel had arranged everything: designer dress, car service, photographers. Lucy protested, but Nathan insisted. If we're going to play the part, we do it properly. When the car pulled up, she stepped out, and the world seemed to stop breathing. The velvet gown hugged her shoulders like liquid midnight. Her hair, pinned simply, framed her face in soft waves. She looked radiant, not because of the dress, but because she carried herself like someone who had nothing left to prove. Nathan stood frozen by the door, tie forgotten, heart pounding in a way he didn't recognize. She looked at him, a nervous smile playing on her lips. Do I look right? He swallowed. You look. He caught himself, perfectly convincing. The lie burned on his tongue. Inside the hall, cameras flashed like lightning. Nathan placed his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd. She was trembling, though she hid it well. Just breathe, he whispered. They can smell fear. Her lips twitched. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Not even a little. But he was not the attention, not the act, but the strange, from me, fragile intimacy of pretending with her. When they reached the press wall, he turned to her. Ready, Lucy took a breath, lifted her chin, and slipped her hand into his. The cameras exploded in white, and suddenly, it wasn't pretend anymore. Her fingers fit against his, as if they'd done it 1,000 times. The scent of her perfume, faint jasmine, pulled something raw and unspoken out of him. He looked down, and she looked up. The world blurred. For one unguarded heartbeat, there was no deal, no money, no past. There was only the quiet, impossible truth that neither of them dared name. Then someone called his name, Mr. Whitmore, and the moment shattered. He stepped back, smiling for the flashbulbs, his hand still tingling where she'd held it. The night went on like a dream neither of them could wake from. He introduced her to board members, investors, politicians. Each time she smiled, the room seemed to warm. When she spoke soft, poised, genuine, even the most jaded faces softened. She didn't fake charm. She simply was it. At one point, he caught Rachel watching them from across the room, eyebrows raised in approval. "See," she mouthed. "She's perfect." Nathan wasn't sure if that comforted or terrified him. After midnight, when the last flash faded and the crowd thinned, Nathan led her out to the terrace overlooking the city. The air was cool, the skyline glittering like scattered diamonds. Lucy leaned against the railing, exhaling softly. "You survived," he said. "Barely." She laughed, rubbing her arms. "I thought I'd trip over those photographers, or say something stupid. You didn't." She smiled, eyes soft. "You're different when you're not in front of them. So are you." For a moment, neither spoke. The city stretched beneath them, beautiful and distant, like a life they both used to know. Then, quietly, Lucy said, "You don't really need me, do you? You just need to look like you have a heart." Nathan turned to her. "Maybe. But tonight, I didn't have to fake it." Her breath caught. She looked away quickly. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because this isn't real," she whispered. "And if you keep saying things like that, I might forget." He wanted to say more, that it felt real to him, that he didn't understand why. But before he could, Noah's face flashed in his mind, the boy's smile, the trust in his eyes, and he realized the stakes weren't just his own. He stepped back, creating a distance that hurt more than it should. "You're right," he said quietly. "It's just a contract." But even as he said it, he knew he was lying. Because somewhere between the storm and the spotlight, between pretending and feeling, something had already crossed the line. The storm outside had long passed, but another one had begun inside Nathan Whitmore. It started with a name. He'd been searching Lucy's background for weeks, not out of suspicion, but a restless curiosity that refused to die. The way she flinched when someone mentioned hospitals, the way Noah's eyes lingered on him, unexplainably trusting, the way she looked at him sometimes as if she wanted to say something, but didn't dare. So one evening, when the house was quiet and his thoughts refused to sleep, Nathan opened his laptop and typed her name, Lucy Johnson. The search led him to an old hospital record, filed under emergency. Chicago General Hospital, December 14th, 7 years ago. Patient, Lucy J. Johnson status survived. Notes: severe smoke inhalation, minor burns, pregnant, approximately 10 weeks, victim of Whitmore Foundation gala fire. Nathan's breath caught. He knew that night. He had lived it, or rather, stumbled through it, half conscious, half drunk, lost in the chaos of fire and guilt. 7 years ago. The Whitmore Foundation gala had been a triumph until it became a nightmare. He'd been running on sleepless nights and painkillers prescribed for insomnia. A double dose. A few glasses of wine and his mind had become a blur of laughter, perfume, and flickering light. He remembered smoke, someone screaming, the fire alarms, a power outage. And before that, he remembered a woman. Dark skin, trembling hands, jasmine scent. He remembered her pulling him from the flames as he fell against her, dazed, disoriented. And then nothing. Just a memory of warmth in the middle of the fire and the shame of not knowing what happened after. He'd tried to find her, His lawyers had investigated every survivor, but her file had been sealed. Her address changed. Her name gone. Until now. And here she was. In his house. In his life. With a boy who had his eyes. Nathan's world tilted. He stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Then, with trembling hands, he opened a new document, a simple requisition form. One he'd used 100 times before in clinical research. He ordered a private DNA test, a hair from his brush, a strand from Noah's sweater. He sent it off the next morning, heart pounding like a man confessing to a crime. Days passed. He couldn't focus at work. His emails went unanswered. Rachel called twice, once about a meeting, once about a rumor, and both times he hung up before she finished. Because every time he looked at Noah, he saw more pieces of himself. The same crooked smile, the same way of frowning when concentrating, the same stubborn silence. And every time Lucy caught him staring, he'd look away too fast, too guilty. Something in her eyes said she noticed. The results came in on a Wednesday. He was in his study when the email arrived. One short subject line: confidential paternity test results. Whitmore, Johnson. Noah. Nathan clicked. The world blurred to white. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. He read it once, then again, and again, until the letters stopped making sense. Noah wasn't just the boy who had made him smile again. He was his son. His. The realization hit him like sunlight breaking through a crack, too bright, too painful. Guilt. Wonder. Terror, they collided in his chest, until he could barely breathe. He wanted to run downstairs, to tell her, to say, "I know now. I remember you. I remember that night." But what right did he have? 7 years ago. He had destroyed her life without even knowing it. He had walked away unscarred, while she had carried the fire inside her literally and figuratively. How could he tell her that the man who ruined her past was now the one standing in her present? He couldn't. Not yet. So instead, he changed. Lucy noticed first. He started coming home earlier. He learned how Noah liked his cocoa extra marshmallows. Half milk, half cream. He stopped checking his phone at dinner. One morning, she woke to find him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, cooking pancakes that looked like they'd lost a battle with gravity. Noah laughed so hard he nearly fell off his chair. "Mom, look, Mr. Whitmore's cooking." Nathan grinned, flipping a pancake that landed halfway on the pan. "It's edible." "Probably." Lucy leaned against the counter, watching him with cautious amusement. "You don't have to do this." "I know," he said, "but I want to." His voice was calm, but beneath it ran something unspoken, a longing she couldn't name. She didn't know that each small act was his way of atonement, that every laugh from Noah was both a blessing and a punishment. To her, he was simply changing. To him, she was everything he wished he'd done right. One evening, Lucy came home late from a double shift at a nearby clinic. The house was dark except for a glow in the living room. Nathan was there, asleep on the couch, a book fallen to his side. Noah was curled up beside him, head on his chest, both breathing in sync, father and son, unaware of the truth connecting them. Lucy froze. Something inside her broke and mended all at once, in that quiet, ordinary moment. The man she'd tried to hate for his privilege looked nothing like the billionaire from the headlines. He looked human, fragile, beautiful in the way grief can make someone gentle. She walked closer, brushed Noah's curls from his face, and whispered, "Good night, baby." Her fingers lingered a moment too long, grazing Nathan's hand by accident. He stirred slightly, eyes half opening. "Lucy." "Go back to sleep," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Stay a minute." She should have left, but she didn't. She sat down, her heart traitorously soft, and for the first time since she'd stepped into this house, she let the quiet wrap around her like something safe. Later, when he woke alone, Nathan found a blanket draped over his shoulders, and on the coffee table, a mug of cocoa, still warm. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope. Maybe forgiveness wasn't impossible. Maybe love, even if born from the ruins of guilt, could still be real. But deep down, he knew the truth hadn't disappeared. It was only waiting. And when it came, as it always does, it would demand everything. The next day, he picked Noah up from school. The boy ran toward him, waving a certificate. "I got first in the spelling bee." Nathan lifted him up, laughter breaking through his chest, like light through glass. "That's amazing. Noah. Mom said you'd be proud." Nathan's smile faltered. "She said that." "Yeah." Noah nodded. "She says you're not as cold as people think, just lonely." Nathan blinked. For a moment, the world blurred again. She's right. They drove home in comfortable silence. At a red light, Noah asked suddenly, "Do you believe people can be born twice?" Nathan looked at him, startled. "Why do you ask?" Noah shrugged. "Mom says I was her second chance. I think maybe you need one too." Nathan couldn't speak. He reached over and tousled the boy's hair, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Maybe I do." That night, Nathan stood outside Lucy's door, listening to the faint hum of music inside. The same lullaby Noah always played, the same one that haunted his dreams. He raised his hand to knock, to tell her everything, to confess the past, the truth, the connection between them. But then he heard her voice, soft, tired, whispering to her son, "Sleep, my heart. Tomorrow will be better." He lowered his hand. Tomorrow. He would tell her tomorrow. But tomorrow, as fate always does, had other plans. It began with a headline: "Billionaire Nathan Whitmore, secretly father's child with black housemaid." By the time the sun rose over Chicago, the story had devoured every screen, every feed, every whisper. Images of Lucy leaving the grocery store with Noah, photos taken without consent, without mercy, were splashed across tabloids. Her face blurred, his not. The captions were venom dressed as curiosity. Who is she? How long has the affair lasted? How much did he pay her to stay silent? By noon, the gates outside Whitmore Mansion were drowning in cameras, flashes, voices, a wall of noise. "Mr. Whitmore, is it true? Is the boy yours? Are you buying her silence?" Inside, Lucy stood in the living room clutching Noah, her body shaking. Every window seemed to have eyes. Every sound was a threat. "Mommy, why are they shouting?" Noah whispered, his voice small, terrified. She knelt, cupping his face. "It's okay, baby. They're just confused." But her voice trembled, betraying her lie. When she looked up, Nathan was at the door, suit unbuttoned, tie gone, face pale with exhaustion. The expression in his eyes wasn't fear. It was something deeper. Guilt. "I'll fix this," he said. Lucy's throat closed. How they've already made up their story. "I'll tell them the truth." What truth? She shot back. "That you used me to clean your house, to clean up your image, or that you've been lying to both of us since the day we met." He flinched but didn't answer. Instead, he took his phone, dialed a number, and said only 3 words. "Prepare a statement." An hour later, the world watched. Nathan Whitmore, the man who never cracked, stood behind a podium under 2 bright studio lights. Cameras lined the room like rifles. He took a breath, his hands trembling slightly, and spoke. "She's not my employee," he said. His voice was calm, deliberate, the kind that once moved investors and senators alike. "She's not a secret. She's not a scandal. She's the woman I love." The room went still. Then chaos erupted. Questions, shouts, microphones thrust forward. But Nathan had already walked off stage. He didn't wait for applause or understanding. He didn't care. For once, the truth was enough. That night, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. No cameras, no noise. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of the city outside. Lucy sat by the window, her back to him when he entered. On the table between them lay an envelope, white, sealed, heavy as guilt. He picked it up, his fingers tracing the embossed logo. Confidential. DNA results. He didn't need to open it again. He already knew. But he needed her to know that he knew. "Lucy." His voice broke on her name. "I know." She turned slowly. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed red from crying. Know what? Nathan set the envelope down like a confession. "Noah. He's my son." The air vanished between them. Lucy's hand flew to her mouth for a heartbeat. She couldn't breathe. Then, when she finally found her voice, it came out a whisper edged with steel. "You had no right." He took a step closer. "I had to be sure." "No," she said, rising. "You wanted to own the truth. Like everything else. You wanted control. That's not—" She cut him off. "You think I didn't know who you were the night we met? You think I didn't recognize the name on that hospital form? I've lived with it for 7 years." Her words hit him like blows. Nathan stared, stunned. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you already took enough from me," she cried. "My body, my future, my peace, all because you were too drunk, too rich, too blind to see the damage you caused." Her voice cracked, echoing through the glass walls. For a moment, all he could do was stand there, silent, a man stripped bare by his own past. Then, softly, "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't." She laughed bitterly. And that's supposed to make it better. Ignorance isn't innocence, Nathan. It's just privilege with a prettier name. Noah appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Mommy Lucy froze. Her anger vanished instantly, replaced by fear. Nathan knelt, trying to steady his voice. Hey, buddy, it's late. Go back to bed. But the boy looked between them at his mother's tears, at his father's shaking hands. Are you fighting no? Lucy said quickly. Everything's okay. The lie cracked in her throat. Nathan forced a smile. We're just talking. Noah frowned. You sound like you're breaking. The words were so simple, so honest. They shattered what was left of Nathan's composure. He stood, walked to the boy, and placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, Noah, for everything. Lucy's lips parted, but no sound came. Noah looked at him, confused. Why are you sorry? Nathan's voice was a whisper. Because I should have found you sooner. Lucy closed her eyes. She couldn't take it, the tenderness, the truth, the unbearable ache of what could never be undone. Go upstairs, sweetheart, she murmured. Please. Noah hesitated, then obeyed. His small footsteps faded up the stairs. The silence that followed was colder than the rain. Lucy turned back to Nathan, tears streaming freely now. You can't fix this with money or apologies. You can't erase the years I spent alone, terrified, raising your son while you built your empire. He stepped closer, but she moved back. I'm not trying to erase it, he said quietly. I'm trying to make it mean something. Her voice broke. You already did. It meant pain. He flinched. For a moment, neither of them moved. The storm outside had returned, wind beating against the glass like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Finally, Nathan spoke, barely audible. Please, give me a chance to be his father. She shook her head, choking on sobs. You don't get to want that now. Lucy. No, she cried, voice sharp as glass. You don't understand. Every time I look at him, I see you. I see that night. And for years, I tried to forgive the man who hurt me, but it turns out he was right here, offering me jobs, contracts, pretending to care. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. I wasn't pretending. Then what were you doing? Trying to atone. She looked at him, eyes glistening. You can't atone for something that cost me my life. He didn't argue. He couldn't. Instead, he sank into the nearest chair, head in his hands. I thought I'd lost everything once, he whispered. Turns out, I didn't lose enough. For a long time. Lucy just watched him, this man who had all the power in the world and none of the peace. And in that strange, painful silence, her heart did something she didn't expect. It hurt for him, because even monsters bleed when they realize they're human. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. What do you want from me? He looked up, eyes raw. A chance to make it right, to be there for Noah. And maybe, if there's any grace left in this world, to learn how to love you the way I should have. Lucy stared at him. The storm cast shards of light across his face, half shadow, half confession. Love isn't penance. Nathan, she said, it's truth, and you've hidden too much of it. He nodded slowly. Then let me start telling it. She turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. I don't know if I can believe you. Then let me try until you do. His voice was quiet, steady, not pleading, but raw, with something close to prayer. Lucy said nothing. The rain answered for her, tapping against the glass like an unfinished symphony. Later that night, she found him outside, standing barefoot on the patio, rain soaking his shirt. He looked up when she opened the door. You'll get sick, she said softly. Maybe I deserve to. She sighed, stepping closer, the cold air biting her skin. You can't keep punishing yourself forever. He smiled weakly. Then let me spend forever making it right. The rain fell harder, somewhere inside. Noah stirred in his sleep, dreaming of warmth while his parents stood beneath the storm, separated by truth, connected by love that refused to die. And though neither of them said it, both knew something had ended tonight, and something else, fragile and new, had begun. The news cycle never slept, for weeks. Nathan Whitmore's name filled every headline, every whisper, every boardroom silence. Whitmore ousted after scandal. Investors withdraw billions amid personal controversy. From genius to disgrace, the fall of a billionaire. It wasn't just his company that collapsed. It was his identity. His board voted him out. His partners stopped returning calls. Former allies released statements about unethical personal conduct and emotional instability. The same people who once toasted him in penthouse suites now pretended they'd never known his name. The mansion that had once glowed like glass under sunlight now felt like a mausoleum too clean, too quiet, too full of ghosts. Lucy and Noah stayed only because the world outside was crueler. Reporters still camped near the gates. Their questions were knives, dressed as curiosity. Is it true you trapped him? Was this your plan all along? Does the boy know his father is a disgrace? The words left bruises that no photograph could show. One morning, Lucy found Nathan sitting alone in the kitchen, wearing the same shirt as the night before. The news on the TV whispered his ruin like a lullaby. He looked up as she entered. His eyes were bloodshot, not from anger, from exhaustion. They voted me out, he said simply, effective immediately. Lucy froze. Nathan. He gave a hollow laugh. They said, I've become a liability. I suppose they're right. She wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, but it was not the scandal, not the headlines, but the way he'd believed love could survive inside a world built on power. I never cared about the company, he said quietly, but I cared about what I built, the idea that I could fix everything if I worked hard enough. He looked at her, eyes raw. But I couldn't fix you, or him, or me. Her heart twisted. You don't have to fix anything. Nathan, she whispered, you just have to let go. He smiled faintly. That's the one thing I was never good at. That night, she made her decision. She couldn't stay. Not like this, not as his shadow. Not as the woman the world had branded the mistake that cost a king his crown. Noah needed peace. Nathan needed to rebuild. And she She needed to breathe again. She packed quietly. A single suitcase. Noah's favorite toy tucked between shirts. Her hands trembled. But her resolve did not. Nathan found her at the door, coat on, suitcase beside her. "You're leaving," he said. It wasn't a question. Lucy nodded. "You need space. So do I." He stepped closer, desperate but restrained. "You don't have to go. Let them say what they want. Let them destroy me. But don't." She shook her head. "It's not about them. It's about us." He went still. She continued, voice breaking. "You said you wanted to make things right. Maybe this is how, by letting each other go, before we ruin what little we have left. Lucy, don't make this harder," she whispered. "Please." The air between them was thick, aching. Finally, Nathan nodded, not in agreement, but in surrender. He didn't beg. He didn't argue. He just looked at her the way a man does when he knows he's about to lose everything that ever mattered. Hours later, rain began to fall again, soft, persistent, familiar. At the airport, Lucy held Noah's hand as they stood in line. Her heart ached, but she told herself it was the right choice. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. A man's voice. Urgent. "Ms. Johnson. This is Mercy General. Your son's name is Noah." "Correct." Her blood turned to ice. "Yes," she whispered. "Why, there's been an accident." Nathan was halfway down the highway when his phone rang too. He didn't remember pulling over, didn't remember the rain, didn't even remember the drive to the hospital. Only the sound of Lucy's voice, trembling through the receiver. "It's Noah. A car hit him. They don't know if he'll—" The words never finished. When he burst through the emergency doors, Lucy was there, soaked, shaking. Mascara streaked like war paint. He didn't ask for details, didn't ask how or why. He just grabbed her hands. "Where is he?" "They're in surgery," she whispered. "Head trauma. Internal bleeding." He froze. For how long? An hour, maybe more. He turned toward the operating room doors, only to feel her pull him back. Her eyes were wild, broken. "Don't do this. Nathan, don't promise me things you can't keep." He looked at her, rain still dripping from his hair. "If God gives me one more chance, I won't use power to keep you. I'll use love to stay." The words fell between them too late. Maybe, but true. Lucy's lips trembled. "You think love can fix this?" "No," he said softly. "But it can make it worth surviving." She wanted to tell him to stop, that this wasn't the time, but her heart betrayed her, because for the first time, she believed him. Hours passed like centuries. 5 hours. 5 endless hours of sterile light and whispered prayers. Nathan sat with his head in his hands, the DNA envelope crushed in his coat pocket. Beside him, Lucy clutched a rosary she hadn't touched in years. Her lips moved without sound, every few minutes. She glanced at the double doors, half expecting a doctor to emerge, half dreading it. At one point, Nathan reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Their fingers interlocked, silent witnesses to a love born from ruin. When the surgeon finally appeared, Lucy stood so quickly her chair fell backward. "Mrs. Johnson." Her voice cracked. "Yes, the surgery was successful. He's stable. He'll need time. But he's a strong kid." Her knees buckled. Nathan caught her before she fell. For a moment, she didn't cry. She just clung to him, trembling, unable to process relief after so much fear. Then the tears came hot, heavy, unstoppable. He held her through them all. Later, when they were allowed inside, Noah lay pale but peaceful under the soft glow of the machines. Nathan stood beside Lucy, watching the steady rise and fall of their son's chest. "He's going to be okay," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Noah's forehead. Nathan nodded, his voice barely there. "He's stronger than both of us." Lucy smiled weakly. "He always was." They stood in silence. The hum of the monitors became their heartbeat. Nathan turned to her, eyes glistening. "Thank you for saving him." She looked at him, weary but kind. "You saved him too." "No," he said quietly. "He saved me." Lucy studied him for a long moment, the man who had once been untouchable, now stripped bare before love and loss. She saw in him not the billionaire who'd hurt her, but the father who would die for his son. And for the first time, she didn't feel anger, only sorrow, and something softer, almost like grace. When dawn came, she found him asleep by Noah's bedside, head resting on the boy's blanket, his hand still holding Noah's. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting his face gold. Lucy watched him for a long while, the weight of years pressing on her chest pain, forgiveness, and the strange peace that follows survival. She reached out, brushed a drop of dried tear from his cheek, and whispered, "You're human after all." He didn't stir. Outside, the city stirred awake, unaware that somewhere in a small, sterile room, 3 lives had been rewritten, not by scandal, not by money, but by something quieter and stronger than both. 2 years had passed. Chicago's skyline still glittered, but Nathan Whitmore no longer belonged to it. The man who once ruled glass towers and boardrooms now lived in a 2-bedroom apartment above a bookstore in Brooklyn, where mornings began not with conference calls but with the smell of roasted coffee drifting from across the street. It was a small cafe, nothing remarkable, just a corner of warmth in a city that never slowed down. But to him, it was everything, because it was hers, Lucy's place. The painted sign above the door leaned slightly to the right. The bell chimed when you entered. There was always music not from a playlist, but from an old upright piano in the corner, played by a boy whose laughter could quiet even the busiest morning. Noah. He was 8 now, taller, still wide-eyed, still carrying a light that neither time nor pain could dim. Every morning, Nathan stopped by, not because of the coffee, though her latte was perfect, with just enough cinnamon and foam. He came for the ritual of it, the small exchange of glances, the quiet smiles, the moments that made the world feel bearable again. The first time he'd shown up, a year after the hospital, Lucy had looked at him as if he were a ghost. He had walked in wearing jeans and a worn gray sweater. No suit, no tie, no entourage, just a man carrying a book and a hesitant smile. She had frozen behind the counter. Nathan. He nodded. Just coffee. Her lips curved slightly. You don't even drink coffee. I do now. And so it began, a slow, delicate rhythm that became their unspoken language. He would arrive every morning at 9. She would pour his latte without asking. They would exchange a few quiet words, sometimes about Noah, sometimes about nothing at all. The rest. They let the silence say for them. Nathan had left the corporate world for good. After his resignation, he liquidated his shares and used part of his fortune to found a small charity, the Bridge Hearts Foundation, dedicated to supporting single mothers in healthcare and education. When the press asked him why, he said simply, "Because someone once showed me that strength doesn't always wear a suit." He gave no further explanation. He didn't need to. The foundation thrived quietly, just as he had learned to live quietly. But every evening, after the meetings and the speeches, he found himself walking back to that cafe, the one with the crooked sign, and the woman who had once taught him how to feel again. Lucy's life, too, had shifted. She no longer worked in hospitals. Instead, she poured her care into her cafe, a space where nurses stopped for warmth between shifts, where young mothers found comfort, where Noah's piano filled the room with small miracles. She wore her hair shorter now, often tied back with a red scarf. There was a steadiness in her, the calm of a woman who had survived her storms and learned to live with the quiet. Sometimes, when Nathan walked in, she still felt the faint ache of old memories, the fire, the betrayal, the years lost to fear. But the anger was gone. In its place was something gentler. Forgiveness had taken root without her realizing. One afternoon, the cafe was empty except for the two of them. Rain drummed softly against the windows, the kind of rain that didn't demand attention, but stayed long enough to be felt. Noah was upstairs, doing homework. The smell of coffee and vanilla filled the room. Nathan sat at his usual table, reading a thin paperback. He looked up as Lucy approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "You read more now," she said, teasing lightly. "Retirement suits you." He smiled. "You make it sound like I'm 80. She shrugged. "You used to be older." He laughed quietly. "And now you look." She hesitated, eyes softening. Human. That word hit him like sunlight through fog. He set the book down. "I'm trying." "I know," she said. "You've come a long way. So have you." Their eyes met, not with the intensity of lovers, but the recognition of two people who had rebuilt themselves from the same ruins. They fell into silence. The rain deepened. Outside, the city blurred into gray and gold. Lucy leaned against the counter, looking at him. "Do you ever miss it? The power, the money?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No. I miss believing that those things could fill the silence, but they never did. And now, he said softly, "I think I just want peace." She smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who's finally found home." Nathan looked at her, really looked the curve of her smile, the steadiness of her hands, the warmth in her eyes. "Maybe I have." Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. That evening, Noah came down the stairs holding a sheet of paper. Mom, Mr. Whitmore. Listen. He sat at the piano, his legs barely reaching the pedals, and began to play. It was a simple melody, the same one he'd practiced for years, the same one that once played faintly through hospital walls. But now it was complete, every note certain, every pause deliberate. When he finished, the last note lingered like a heartbeat. Lucy clapped softly, tears glinting in her eyes. That was beautiful. Sweetheart. Nathan smiled, his throat tight. What's it called? Watha grinned. Home. The word hit both of them at once. Lucy looked away quickly, blinking back tears. Nathan's gaze stayed fixed on the boy, the living proof of everything they had lost and everything they had found again. After Noah went upstairs, the cafe was quiet once more. Nathan rose, walked to the counter, and leaned against it. Lucy, he said, his voice low, hesitant. She looked up, eyebrows raised. If I'm not a billionaire anymore, he said, if I'm just a man who makes terrible pancakes and reads too slowly, would you ever give me a chance to start over? She tilted her head, studying him, the sincerity in his eyes, the humility that had taken him a lifetime to learn. Then, softly, she smiled. If you're still the man you've become, she said, then I don't need the one you used to be. Her words landed like a blessing. Nathan exhaled, laughter and tears tangled together. You really do make everything sound easy. It's not, she said quietly. It just stopped being impossible. He reached across the counter, his hand brushing hers, a brief, trembling touch that said everything words could not. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The rain outside slowed to a whisper. Somewhere above, Noah hummed the melody of home. Lucy looked down at their joined hands. You should know, she whispered. I'm not the same woman you met. Nathan smiled gently. Good. I'm not the same man who ruined everything. Silence again, but this time, it was the kind that held peace instead of pain. As evening settled, the city glowed outside the window, neon signs flickering, car lights weaving like fireflies. Lucy locked up the cafe, turned off the lights, and found Nathan still sitting by the window, watching the rain fade into mist. She walked over. Come on, she said softly. It's closing time. He stood, slipping on his coat. You still make the best coffee in the city, and you still leave the biggest tips, she teased. He grinned. Habit. At the door, she paused. See you tomorrow? Nathan nodded. Every tomorrow, you'll have me. She didn't answer, but her smile warm, steady, radiant said enough. Outside, the street smelled of wet asphalt and jasmine. Nathan looked back once before walking away, the light from the cafe window spilling across the sidewalk, golden and soft, like a promise. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like he was chasing redemption. He was simply living it. And in that little cafe in Brooklyn, where love had once been a wound, it had finally become a home. 3 years later, the city was blooming again. Spring had come to Brooklyn, soft rain on window panes, laughter spilling from cafes, tulips lining the streets like small miracles. At the old community center by the river, A crowd had gathered beneath a banner that read, "The Bridge Hearts Foundation, empowering single mothers, building new beginnings." The air smelled of coffee and possibility. Nathan stood near the back of the hall, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the stage. Lucy was there in a simple white dress, hair pinned up, eyes steady and alive. The spotlight touched her gently, as if it knew she'd earned the right to shine without fear. She took a deep breath before speaking, her voice warm, steady, and strong. 3 years ago, I was a woman who thought love was something that happened to other people, people untouched by failure or loss. But life, I've learned, is kinder than we think. It doesn't erase the pain. It gives it purpose. Love doesn't erase the past. It helps us turn it into light. The room went silent. Even the cameras paused, as if afraid to interrupt her truth. Nathan felt his throat tighten. He had seen her break before, had held her, while the world burned around them. But this was different. This was rebirth. Lucy smiled, her eyes finding his in the crowd. "This foundation isn't just about second chances," she said. "It's about the bridges we build from our scars, the way we carry others across the rivers we once drowned in." Applause swelled, long and thunderous. Nathan didn't clap. He couldn't. His hands were shaking too hard. After the ceremony, the guests spilled into the courtyard, sunlight rippling across the water. Noah sat at the piano, set near the stage, taller now, confident, his fingers moving gracefully across the keys. The song was Home. It had changed over the years, fuller, more certain, but it still carried the same melody that once played in a hospital room, that once held two broken souls together. As the final notes lingered, Nathan walked to the stage. Lucy was talking to a group of donors, laughter lighting her face. When she saw him, the world seemed to soften. She excused herself and stepped down, meeting him halfway. "You were incredible," he said. "I was terrified," she admitted, smiling. "Public speaking still makes me want to disappear." "Then you hide beautifully." She laughed, that quiet, familiar laugh that still undid him. For a moment, they just stood there, letting the music fade into the breeze. "Do you remember?" Nathan said softly. "The night you told me you'd never believe in miracles again." Lucy's eyes glimmered. "I was a different person then. And now I believe they don't come from the sky," she said. "They come from people who refuse to give up on each other." He nodded slowly. "You gave me that." She tilted her head. "And you gave me back my name." He smiled faintly. "No, you did that yourself." Their silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was full, like two hearts finally resting after a long journey. They walked along the riverbank as the sun began to set, the city glowing gold behind them. Nathan's foundation had grown beyond his dreams. Hundreds of women had found work, education, and dignity through it. But more than success, he'd found something rarer: peace. He'd learned how to listen instead of fix, how to give without owning, how to love without fear. Lucy's cafe was thriving, too. Lucy's place had become a symbol, a space where people healed over coffee and music, where Noah's piano lessons filled the afternoons. They still lived separate lives, connected by small rituals, morning calls, shared events. The quiet understanding that they were no longer bound by pain, but by choice. And yet, every time Nathan saw her. The question lingered, not urgent, not desperate, just quietly waiting. That evening, as they reached the edge of the pier, he finally asked it. "If I told you I still love you," he said, "not as the man I was, but as the man I am now, would that change anything?" She turned to face him, the light catching in her eyes. "Nathan," she whispered, "you've already changed everything." He took a step closer. "Then let me say it. Just once, thank you for letting me love you again. Not the woman I hurt, but the woman you've become." Her eyes filled with tears, but her smile was steady. "And thank you," she said softly, "for becoming the man I can finally forgive." He reached for her hand, not to claim it, but to hold it, gently, reverently. The contact was electric and tender all at once, not the beginning of something new, but the quiet continuation of something that had never truly ended. In the distance, Noah's laughter echoed through the air. He was showing a younger girl how to play the opening notes of Home. Lucy watched him, pride warming her chest. "He's growing too fast." Nathan smiled. "He's growing into everything we hoped he'd be." For a long moment, they simply stood together, watching their boy under the soft wash of evening light. The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of jasmine and rain, the same scent that had followed them through every chapter of their story. Lucy leaned into him slightly, not needing words. Nathan looked at her, at the sunset reflected in her eyes, and thought, this is what redemption looks like. Not grand gestures or apologies, just presence, just love, quiet and steadfast, like the tide returning to shore. The crowd began to thin. The city lights flickered on, one by one. Noah finished his song, the last note stretching into the golden twilight. Nathan turned to Lucy, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever wonder," he said, "how something so broken could lead us here?" Lucy smiled, tears glinting. "Every day. And I've stopped wondering why," she said. "Some stories aren't meant to be understood, just lived." He exhaled, laughter trembling through his voice. "You sound wiser than me. That's because I had a good teacher." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in gold and rose. Nathan reached for her hand again. She didn't pull away. The world seemed to slow the laughter of children, the murmur of water, the music fading into memory. And for the first time since that long-ago night of rain and chaos, there was only peace. No ghosts, no guilt, no distance, just light. Later, as the event drew to an end, Lucy returned to the stage one last time. She looked out at the audience faces from every walk of life, women who had fought their own battles and learned to build bridges from their pain. "Love," she said, "doesn't save us from suffering. It walks beside us through it. It teaches us not to be unbroken, but to be whole, even in our cracks. And if you ever lose your way, remember, the light doesn't leave. It waits for you to turn back." The crowd rose in applause. Nathan watched her, pride and awe in his eyes. When she stepped down, he was there waiting, holding out his hand. She took it, and as the applause swelled behind them, Noah began to play. Home once more, slower this time, gentler, as if saying goodbye to every shadow they had ever carried. The sun slipped below the horizon, the sky turning amber, then violet. Nathan looked at her, at the boy, at the light. "Do you feel it?" he asked. Lucy nodded. "What?" "The world starting over." She smiled. "No. Just us." They stood there, three hearts, one story as the last light of day poured over them, warm and forgiving, and for the first time in a very long time. Nathan Whitmore believed that some loves don't end. They simply come home. Love doesn't save us from pain. It teaches us how to walk through it with someone who chooses to stay. If this story reminded you that healing is possible, share it. Somewhere out there, another heart is still waiting for its light to return.